Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Stavtara Satashishimaras Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBD Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Astotara Satashishimaras Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Gaudi Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shlahadadas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai Brihat Madanga Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Bhagavad-gita, Chapter 2, Text 49. The chapter is entitled The Contents of the Gita Summarized, and it's Lord Sri Krishna who is speaking at this point. So the Sanskrit goes as follows. Durena hi avadam karma, buddhi yoga dhananjaya, buddho saranam anvichcha, kripana palahetava. Since I'm the only one chanting, well, I guess I'll just do it once like that. Now, this is a word-for-word translation of what the Sanskrit I just chanted. Durena means discard it at a long distance. He, certainly. Avaram, abominable. Karma, activity. Buddhi yoga, on the strength of Krishna consciousness. Dhananjaya, O conqueror of wealth. Buddha, in such consciousness. Sadanam, full surrender. Anvicha, try for. Kripana, misers. Palahetava, those desiring fruit of results. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. Purport. One who has actually come to understand one's constitutional position as an eternal servitor of the Lord gives up all engagements save and except working in Krishna consciousness. As already explained, Buddha Yoga means transcendental loving service to the Lord. Such devotional service is the right course of action for the living entity. Only misers desire to enjoy the fruit of their own work, just to be further entangled in material bondage. Except for work in Krishna consciousness, all activities are abominable because they continually bind the worker to the cycle of birth and death. One should therefore never desire to be the cause of work. Everything should be done in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of Krishna. Misers do not know how to utilize the assets of riches, which they acquire by good fortune or by hard labor. One should spend all energies working in Krishna consciousness, and that will make one's life successful. Like misers, unfortunate persons do not employ their human energy in the service of the Lord. Om Ganatamanam Dasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurna Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Garamayam Dadati Swaparantikam. So this is a relatively short purport. So we're going to go through this sentence by sentence, and then I'm going to elaborate upon what Prabhupada has said. Okay. Odhananja, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So basically what's being said there, what Prabhupada calls abominable activities, that's karmic activities, and activities you're performing for your own satisfaction. So Krishna here, he's instructing Arjuna in Buddha Yoga in this section. Up until verse 39, he was giving them Sankhya Yoga, an analytical, breakdown of the constituting the soul and etc. But as in verse 39, Krishna says that he's going to now he's going to explain another, further touch upon devotional service. So that's what's in this section of the Gita. That's what we're hearing about, and so here's making the point that don't engage in fruitive activities. Don't do things for your own satisfaction. That's what's being referred to as abominable activity. And Krishna is saying, keep it far distant, and make the decision that everything you're going to do for the satisfaction of Krishna. That's what's being said in the translation. Okay, now here's Prabhupada's purport. One who has actually come to understand one's constitutional position as an eternal servant of the Lord gives up all engagements, save and except working in Krishna consciousness. Right. As already explained, Buddha Yoga means transcendental loving service to the Lord. Such devotional service is the right course of action for the living entity. Only misers desire to enjoy the fruit of their own work just to be further entangled in material bondage. Except for work in Krishna consciousness, all activities are abominable because they continually, basically what's being said here is, in general, is that the soul has a nature. Just like a bird has a nature, it's to fly in the sky, or a fish has a nature, it's to swim in the water. The soul, the nature of the soul is to serve Krishna, is to try to please Krishna, is to engage in activities for the satisfaction of Krishna. And when the soul does that, it's satisfied. Everything works fine. And when the soul doesn't do that, especially the souls that are already here in the material world, then if you don't engage in activities for the satisfaction of Krishna, then the activities that you engage in will keep you in the cycle of birth and death. There's a verse further on in the next chapter, third chapter, where Krishna says, Jagyar tat kamanonyatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartam karma kuntaya mukta sangha param vrajet. That work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, all your activities will bind you to the material nature. There'll be a reaction, a material reaction. But when you act for the satisfaction of Krishna, not only are you engaging in devotional service, you're becoming purified, what to speak of becoming further entangled with material reactions and bound to the cycle of birth and death. So that's what's basically being pointed out here. And Now, Prabhupada makes an interesting, he uses Krishna does actually, uses the word miser. And I looked up the dictionary definition of the word miser. A miser is a person who hoards wealth and spends as little money as possible, sometimes to the point of denying themselves basic comforts and necessities. That's a miser. Okay? So Krishna is saying that those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. Krishna's using, he's making a metaphor here. It's going to be an analogy. So but before we go on to that, I'll give you the definition of a philanthropist, because at least on a material level, a philanthropist is the opposite of a miser. So a philanthropist is a person who seeks to promote the welfare of others, especially by the generous donation of money to good causes. So now how this applies to Krishna consciousness is that a miser, in terms of Krishna consciousness, is somebody who doesn't use his human body to engage in devotional service. And I'll explain why that person's a miser. Because the soul comes into the material world and starts off with a body, a human-like body. Due to misuse of independence, we're degraded. In other words, it takes a lot of time passes before we get the human body. Having the human body is a gift. It's a gift from the material nature. Ultimately, it's a gift from Krishna, because it's in the human body. When you have a human body, that's when you can engage in devotional service and get out of this cycle of birth and death, go back to the spiritual world. So it's wealth. It's a great asset. So if somebody has the human body and they don't use it to try to engage in devotional service, to try to disentangle themselves from this material energy and go back to Godhead, they're like a miser. See, they're considered a miser. They're like a person who has wealth but doesn't know how to use it. See? So a person who has the human body but doesn't engage it in devotional service doesn't know how to use it. Okay? Whereas a philanthropist is a person, as I mentioned here, who seeks to promote the welfare of himself and others, especially by generous donations of money to good causes. So earlier, in an earlier purport, Prabhupada talks about kripanas, which he uses the two words, kripana, which is miser, and a brahmana, which is the equivalent of the philanthropist. So in the Krishna conscious, in this analogy, the Krishna conscious counterpart of a philanthropist is a Brahmin. A Brahmin understands that the human form of life is meant for understanding Brahman, spirit. And he's actively engaged in trying to realize or experience spirit in his own life. And he's also actively engaged. He uses his time. Brahmins don't generally have much money, but Brahmins will use their time and their energy to try to educate others. See? So they're liberal. That's why they're called liberal. In other words, Brahmins are very intelligent, but they're not using their intelligence to try to figure out a way to live comfortably here in the material world, maximizing their sense gratification. No, they're using that intelligence to try to elevate themselves further spiritually and to elevate as many other souls as they possibly can. And as a means to that end, quite often they adopt a very austere way of life. They forego a lot of material comforts. They don't use the opportunity of their intelligent human body to further their own comfort and sense gratification. Rather, they make a big sacrifice, and they're not considering the big sacrifice. They're considering it the intelligent thing to do. They try to elevate themselves spiritually and elevate other people spiritually. So that we're meant to do like that. We're meant to be like that. We're meant to understand that this is what the human form of life is all about. It's all about trying to elevate ourselves spiritually, and it's all about trying to elevate others spiritually. And, if we do like that, then we're properly utilizing this gift of the human form of life. And if we don't do like that, to the degree, it's not black and white, to the degree we don't do like that, we should understand that we're acting in a miserly way, right? So we have to try to cultivate this mentality of philanthropic existence, a transcendental philanthropist. We have to try to become transcendental philanthropists, which is persons who are seeking to promote the welfare of others, especially by generous donations, not of money, but of knowledge, and example of spiritual life. You see, and we have role models. It's not like we're being asked to do something that hasn't already been done very expertly by others. For instance, there's one great example of this is the six Goswamis. They were the direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is, of course, none other than Krishna himself, the devotional incarnation of Krishna. And about them it is said, Tyaktva Tornam Ashesha Mandalapati Srenim Sadatu Chavat Bhutva Dina Ganeshako Karunaya Kopina Kanta Shrito Gopi Bhava Rasamratadi Lahari Kalola Magna Mahor Bande Rupa Sanatano Raguya Go Shri Jiva Gopalago. So the six Goswamis, they were very successful people materially. Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami were highly placed ministers in the government of Nawab Hussain Shah, the Mohammedan occupational government in Bengal at the time. Gopal Bhatta Goswami came from a kind of, an aristocratic Vaishnav family. Raghunath Das Goswami, his father and his family were very wealthy zamindars or landholders, like real estate people. Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, and who did I miss? Gopal Bhatta Goswami, I say Gopal. Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami was the nephew of Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami. In other words, they were all very successful materially. They gave it up. They Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, they had a lot of wealth. They were working as a minister for the basically, the Nawab, who is the equivalent of like the king that time. And but they didn't take it with them. They left it behind for some 25% for the family members, 50% they donated in charity to the Brahmins for the development of Krishna consciousness, and 25% somehow, in other words, kept towards personal emergency. But I think even that was given at some point. So anyway, the point is that they showed, they're great examples. And of course, there are examples in more recent times. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta was our spiritual master was a great example of that. He never got married. He could have gotten married. He didn't get married. He actually dedicated his entire life to reestablishing the Krishna consciousness movement in India in the 20th century, early part of the 20th century. And of course, Srila Prabhupada. So these are like the perfectional examples. We have to try to follow in their footsteps. We're not going to be able to, how would you say, be transcendental philanthropists to the degree that they were. They're ideal. They showed an ideal example. So we can't imitate that, but we have to try to follow in the footsteps, which means, practically speaking, it means that as much as we possibly can, we have to try to practice Krishna consciousness, and we have to try to give it to other people. I'm going to read you a paragraph from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Prabhupada gives a very practical instruction about how we can go about doing that. And it also simultaneously gives us information about how we should be thinking about ourselves and our situation. So this is from chapter 17 of the Adi Lila, and I'm reading from the purport to text number 78. It's what's going on in this particular part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is Lord Chaitanya has just praised Murari Gupta, telling him that he's satisfied Krishna. So, and the purport, Prabhupada points out, and the Murari Gupta responded by quoting a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam that was originally spoken by Sudama Vipra, where Sudama Vipra was being glorified in the same way by Lord Krishna, and his response was that he didn't feel qualified to receive those kind of that praise. And he said to Lord Krishna, since I am but a poor, sinful Brahma Bandhu, not Brahmanically qualified, and although born in a Brahmin family, you, Lord Krishna, are the shelter of the goddess of fortune. It is simply wonderful, my dear Lord Krishna, that you have embraced me with your arms. So Prabhupada points out in the purport that Murari Gupta also was not from a Brahmin family. He was a Vaidya, which practically would consider Sudras. And same thing. He felt the same thing applied to him. Now, Prabhupada in the purport, in the last paragraph of the purport, says this. He says, the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness cannot even call themselves Brahma Bandhus. Therefore, our only means for satisfying Krishna is to pursue the injunctions of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who says, and I'm going to read it in a second, but this is really important stuff for us, because listen to what's being said here. Prabhupada is saying our only means for satisfying Krishna. We're about to hear about our only means for satisfying Krishna, which is, of course, that is the goal of our life. Atak pumbir dvija shrestha varnashrama vibhagasha sunustitasya dharmasha samsiddhir haritosanam, that the perfection, the culmination, the perfection of all the activities that one can perform is to samsiddhir haritosanam, is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So satisfying Krishna, that's what it's all about. And here we're about to hear about the only means by which we can satisfy Krishna. And Prabhupada says it's to pursue the injunction of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is Yade Deka Tade Kaha Krishna Upadesh, Amada Agaya Guru Hana Tada Edesh. Translation is, whomever you meet, instruct him on the teachings of Krishna. In this way, on my order, become a spiritual master and deliver the people of this country. So according to Prabhupada, that is the only means for satisfying Krishna, to pursue that injunction. That's what he's saying here. He's starting off by telling us we can't even, members of the Krishna conscious movement, we can't even consider ourselves Brahma Bandhus. Now, what to speak of that being Brahmins, we're not even proper friends of Brahmins. We're lower than that. We're not very exalted. We're not coming from starting off in a very spiritually elevated position. We're like the bottom of the barrel, but that's okay. Here's the hope. Here's the path upwards for us. The path upwards for us is to do what Prabhupada is saying and what Lord Chaitanya is saying here in this injunction, that wherever we go, whoever we meet, we teach him, we instruct him on the teachings of Krishna. And Prabhupada says, after quoting that verse, he says, simply trying to follow the orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we speak to the people of the world about Bhagavad-gita as it is. And then now he reiterates what he's already said. This will make us qualified to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So, very clear, very simple. Is what we got to do. Yeah, we have to chant 16 rounds. We have to follow the 4 regular principles. But above and beyond that, Prabhupada is indicating here, he's saying here to the members of the Krishna conscious movement that they should do this. They should try to instruct people in the teachings of Krishna as they're presented in Bhagavad-gita. And there's many ways you could do that. It's not like there's only, one way to do that. I mean, I'm giving a Bhagavad-gita class now, so it's one way somebody could do that. But aside from that, you can distribute the Bhagavad-gita. You could, if you're an artist, you could, illustrate the philosophy. If you're, etc. Different, according to a person's talents and abilities, you can do this in different ways. It's not stereotyped. It's not like there's only one way you could go about sharing the teachings of Bhagavad Gita with people. There are many. You might be a businessman and don't have the time or the inclination to meet people and tell them about Bhagavad Gita, but you can support the efforts of others who are doing that. That's very important. And by doing that, one is fulfilling this instruction, which is speaking to the people of the world about the Bhagavad Gita. And that will make us qualified to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. So on this point, because Atmani Vedanta pointed out that I've been doing, my service primarily has been book distribution. And I can't remember how long it's been since I gave a class last here, but for the last month or so, we've resumed doing regular Sankirtan here in Los Angeles. For about 10 months during COVID, we were just going around and hanging books on people's doorknobs. But I guess it's about a month and a half ago now, we started going back out into the field and interacting with people face to face. And because the schools are closed, we've been doing that on parking lots, primarily Walmart parking lots and some Target parking lots. The reason being, they allow us, in the sense that not that they give us permission, but they don't stop us. The very low level of security, and like say a month and a half would be out of 45 days doing it, I think we've been told to stop maybe twice or three times, and then we just move on to the next Walmart. So we're finding that at least I'm finding that this is a very practical way to get Bhagavad Gita to people. I'm not saying there aren't other ways, and another way might suit somebody who's listening to this class better. But if you don't have already a way in mind in which you think you can execute this instruction, then consider this, because it's real easy and it's effective. What I do is I just go to a park. I start my day, my Sankirtan day, by going on my phone and Googling Walmart supercenters near me. And I just pick one. And I just drive to that lot. I have the books in my vehicle already. When I get there, I grab one of their shopping carts and I take a box of Bhagavad Gitas, a box of Srimad Bhagavatams, and a box of Perfection of Yoga, and a few Spanish books, and I just put it in their shopping cart. And then I start pushing that shopping cart around that parking lot. And I approach people and I say, excuse me, do you also work here or are you just shopping? It's a qualifying question. It's just a way to kind of get them to stop and, connect with them. And they go, well, shopping. And I say, great, you qualify. And then I hand them a Srimad Bhagavatam with a Bhagavad Gita soft cover on top of that and a Perfection of Yoga on top of that. And I say to them, this is on meditation and yoga. It helps to relieve stress. You heard of stress, right? And they go, whatever. They say, yes, no, yeah, mostly, well, of course, I say, have you heard of monks? And they go, whatever they say. And then we're usually wearing a hat. So at that point, I kind of pull off my hat and I say, I'm something like a monk. And then I say this, and this is a picture of my teacher. And I flip the POY over and I show them the picture of Prabhupada. And I say, then I ask them about themselves. I say, so what do you, if it's a woman, I'll say, are you a nurse or a teacher? Sometimes they say yes, because a lot of women are nurses or teachers. But if they say no, I'll say undercover movie star. And that usually gets a laugh or a smile. And then I just close the sale. I just say, this is for you. We print these books ourselves. We don't sell them. If people give a donation, it just helps us print up another book. Real nonchalant. And I just see what happens. If they give a donation, I rarely do I talk about the book, to be honest with you. I do on occasion, maybe like about 6 to 12 times a day, but not with every person. And I don't really twist any arms. That's my mantra. And I just say that much. And if they give a donation, wonderful. And if they don't give a donation, I say, look, tell you what, no problem. Let me just give you this as a present. Now, here in New Dwarka, we have sponsors for the Bhagavad-gita. So I actually am, even if the people don't give a donation, I'm able to give them a Bhagavad-gita and a perfection of yoga. But if we didn't have sponsors, I'd still be giving them a perfection of yoga. And if the finances is a consideration, give them an on chanting. There's actually a devotee someplace on the East Coast there that will send devotees on chantings for free. You just pay for the shipping. So in other words, it's a good way to distribute, to have something that you could give the person for free in the event that they are not able to or willing to give a donation. And then on to the next person. And it's working. I'm not worrying about the Lakshmi. I'm not worrying about the money. I'm thinking about getting out at least 2 boxes of Bhagavad-gitas. The Gitas we're distributing now are 40 in a box. They're coming from India, different printing. So that's 80 Bhagavad-gitas, and ideally I'd like to distribute 2 boxes of Srimad Bhagavatam. And yesterday, for example, typical day, well, better than typical, but I went to a Target up in San Fernando Valley. It's something I forgot to mention. We deliberately choose areas that are low end, that are economically weaker, because those people are more down to earth. They just are. They're humbler. They're not. They'll talk to you, and even though they probably have a lot less money than people in richer areas, they're a lot more generous. So we're finding that works, and it's not just me. That's a lot of Sankirtan devotees have experienced that same thing. So, yeah. So yesterday I was in a Target parking lot in Pacoima, which is a little town in San Fernando Valley, and 4 hours. We started at 11:30, went till 3:30, and by Krishna's mercy, I was able to distribute 80 Bhagavad-gitas and 44, just 4 short of 2 boxes, 44 Srimad Bhagavatams, and once again. You heard what I say about the Lakshmi, to get the donation. I wound up with like $333 in donations, which I thought was pretty good. And that's without twisting anybody's arm or pressuring anybody in the least. So that's great. I'm just trying to be like in this mood of an ambassador of goodwill. You're giving. We're out there to give people Krishna consciousness. All they have to do is just be willing to accept it, receive it at some level. If they can take the books and give a donation, awesome. If they can just take the books, great. We're still happy with that. We'll give them what we can give them for free. And then I always end up by saying, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure meeting you. I really hope you enjoy the books. If the person expresses some interest, said, oh yeah, I've met you guys before. I read one of these books before. Be honest with you, I say, hey, let's keep in touch. I give them my phone number, and I tell them, if you have anything if you have questions about what's in the book, or if you want to just talk about what you read, give me a ring. I do it like that because I know if I get their phone, I know I'm not going to follow up on it. I don't have the energy, but that I can do that much. If they take the next step, I've taken the first step. If they take the second step and contact me, which not a lot of people do, but some do, then I respond to that. But beyond I feel I'm already kind of doing my reaching out by going out there and meeting them in the first place and giving them the books. Now the ball's in their court. If they return it, then I'll send it back to their court again. So that's what I've been doing, and it's the results have been good, as I just mentioned, and it feels really good. It feels really good. It feels like book distribution is actually it's a special activity. There's been a lot of days, just even in this last month and a half, when to start off with, I'd start off feeling kind of like not very enthusiastic and not very spiritually enlivened, but you just start doing it and chant. My most important line is this: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's my most important line of the mantra. That's the real mantra. And I chant in between people. That's really important. Actually, that's the whole thing as far as I'm concerned, because we're not the doers. No, it's not because I'm some sort of clever salesman or something like that. And I kind of worked it, I got it down to a science, how to, interact with people. No, it's Krishna's mercy. So when I'm out there, as I'm pushing that shopping cart around, in between people, I'm chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I just chant in the way that's easiest for me to chant. So I can just, I just really chant. I chant as loud as I can without, because I don't want people will start looking at me and think, well, is this guy, who's this crazy guy? But I chant, as loud as I can without attracting the attention I don't want. And I'm, I'm praying at the same time. I'm praying to Krishna, I'm praying to the Maha Mantra, which is non-different from Krishna, to please engage me in his service. And when things start happening, which that's what tends to, that's what I'm experiencing, just you struggle a bit, and but if you just keep doing it and you keep chanting and you keep praying to Krishna, then Krishna gives you some mercy. Out of the clear blue sky, somebody just takes the books and gives you a nice donation, and then another one. Or somebody a car comes driving across the parking lot and says, hey, I want one of those books too. All sorts of things happen miraculously. And that's Krishna. You see? So in other words, we just go out there. Actually, there's one letter Prabhupada wrote to Brahmananda way back in 1968. I don't know what Brahmananda said to Prabhupada, but Prabhupada in his reply said, regarding Krishna's being kind upon us, should be on the principle that Arjuna followed. So, this is paraphrasing. Prabhupada said Arjuna was Krishna's best friend, but, but Krishna never told him, just sit down, I'll take care of everything. No, he said, Arjuna had to fight, to his best ability. So Prabhupada said, ordinarily we have to try our best ability to achieve something. But here's the line I was trying to get to. But by Krishna's grace, all of a sudden, we shall see that everything is there. This sort of help from Krishna is transcendental happiness. That's it. So that's it. That's the philosophy there in a nutshell. Ordinarily, we have to try our best to a best capacity to achieve something, like going out and distributing the books. So we have to try our best to a best capacity to achieve something. But by Krishna's grace, but that's not what's going to make it happen. That's not what's producing the good result. What produces the good result is the next part of this. But by Krishna's grace, all of a sudden, we shall see that everything is there. That sort of help from Krishna is transcendental happiness. See? Why? Because you can understand. It's Krishna. So it's simultaneously you're experiencing the good result and you're experiencing Krishna consciousness. You're experiencing that Krishna exists. He's helping you. He really is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And you really are being used, he's using you as his instrument to engage these conditioned souls in devotional service. So you feel happy. It's realization. And actually that same principle is what accounts for how this Krishna consciousness movement even exists. That Prabhupada himself, in a letter he wrote to Sudama, said, when I was alone in your New York, I was thinking, who will listen to me in this horrible place? But then he said, but at least I could distribute a few of my books. That is something. Then Prabhupada said, but then Krishna, he sent you nice young American boys and girls to me one by one for doing the work of Lord Chaitanya. He said, now I could see it as a miracle. He said, otherwise, one old man in your city of New York with barely enough money to buy his food, how can he survive? What to speak of establishing a God conscious movement for saving the whole world? Prabhupada said, no, I could see it's Krishna's miracle. So in other words, even Prabhupada experienced that. Prabhupada came, he was struggling. At first there wasn't, things weren't coming together, but, he was determined, he was sincere, he was determined to execute this mission, execute the instruction of his spiritual master, which was to, tell them, give them the teachings of the Bhagavad-gita. And at some point, Krishna just reciprocated. See? And Prabhupada saw it as Krishna's miracle. He didn't think that, I kind of worked it, now I got it down, I know what to do. And it's okay. No, Prabhupada saw it as Krishna's miracle. Krishna did that. Krishna gave Prabhupada a movement. Prabhupada was so sincere and so determined, and because of that, he forced Krishna's hand. Krishna had to reciprocate. Krishna's number one duty is to please his devotees. So here's his pure devotee, so sincerely, so humbly trying to execute the instruction of his spiritual master. So Krishna can't see his pure devotee be disappointed. So despite the fact that we can't even be called Brahma Bandhus, so despite the fact that there was nobody in New York or in the United States at that time that was qualified to be given devotional service, Krishna made a concession, and to reciprocate with his pure devotee, and he inspired some people to come forward and become followers of Prabhupada. That's how I understand it. There's a purport in the fourth canto where Prabhupada kind of refers to this. He says, there's a pure devotee is always thinking about how to spread the Krishna conscious movement. And Krishna, in reciprocation for that, he enlightens the general populace from within by his causeless mercy. See? So in other words, when Krishna can see how determined Prabhupada was to, execute the instruction of his spiritual master, Krishna's reciprocation was that he enlightened the general populace, not the whole general populace, but some little section, some little percentage of the general populace. He enlightened them from within. He lightens the general populace from within by his causeless mercy. Yeah, it was his causeless mercy, because people who were not ordinarily qualified to become Krishna conscious got the opportunity. It's very rare. Krishna, in the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says, Manushanam Sahasreshu, out of many thousands among men. And I heard Prabhupada say in a lecture that actually now, Krishna said that 5,000 years ago. Now it's millionaire-shu. It's out of many millions of men, one becomes, when it becomes interested in spiritual life. It's very rare. We're not even close to being qualified to come to the platform, be engaged in devotional service. Actually, there's one verse in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita where Krishna says, Yesham tvantakatam papam gyananam punyakarmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajanti mam judavritaha. This is a description. This is Krishna's here saying what is the qualification for being able to be engaged in devotional service. He says, only those who've acted piously in this life and in previous lives, and whose sinful activities are completely eradicated, can engage in devotional service with firm determination. So that's practically none of us. Our sinful activities are complete. No. So actually, once Prabhupada was on a walk with a lot of his disciples, and a devotee asked Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, it says in the Bhagavad-gita, and he quoted that verse, and then he started to ask Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, does that mean that, we were engaged in pious activities in previous lives, and Prabhupada interrupted him. Prabhupada, because he knew where he was going with that. So Prabhupada interrupted him and said, I have created your good fortune. And I think that what I just said previously was how he created. Prabhupada was so sincere about serving his spiritual master that Krishna reciprocated in that way by giving people who were not really qualified to have the opportunity to be engaged in devotional service. He gave us the opportunity. And he lowered the bar. He lowered the bar as much as it possibly could be lowered in order to do that. So, oh yeah, that's what I was talking about, book distribution. So yeah, that's it. So the main qualification is willingness. Just, it's like, okay, a little bit more. You got to, here's what I'm like to say. Any devotee who's prepared to chant 16 rounds and follow the four good principles and go out there and just try can distribute books, because you will be empowered. That's the qualification. You don't have to have any ability as a salesperson. You don't have to have any ability as a scholar, be able to explain the philosophy in a very erudite sort of a way. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about being a salesperson. Don't worry about being a scholar. Don't worry about being a business person. Just go out there, meet the people, and try to engage them. And if you've chanted 16 rounds and you're following the four good principles and you chant Hare Krishna while you're out there, try to remember Krishna and pray for his mercy, you'll get it. You'll get it. Just be determined. Persevere. Don't give up. You're going to get it. You will be empowered to distribute Krishna consciousness. That's the real active principle. That's the real ultimate determining factor. Just that a devotee is sincerely engaging in devotional service. Everything else is external. So let me just see here.
Prabhu, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Actually, I was going to ask about what you answered my question before I could ask it. I was going to ask, being a salesperson is something that enables you to distribute the books like that. But you answered the question in general. But then still, I want to go back to yourself. So in 4 hours, I understand that sometimes you're distributing several books to one person at a time, but it seems to me that basically you're distributing a book at about every 3 minutes, or maybe 4, based on the number of books you told me distributed in 4 hours, since at least 80 of them were to individuals, since there are 80 Bhagavad-gitas. So that's I suppose you have time for 1 or 2 mantras between chanting 1 or 2 Hare Krishna mantras for you to chant between you're talking to separate individuals. So I'm just wondering, well, I guess almost everyone's taking a book, because even if they don't donate, although I gather most of them did, but even if they don't, they're going to give them a book anyway. And I guess what I'm just commenting more than questioning, but let me turn it into a question. Okay. I guess I'm just wondering, could you compare, I don't know, the results of some of your peers, or not your peers, some of the younger folks, the younger devotees who are distributing as well, and tell me about how they're doing, and then could you give a little information about what is, since it's not salesmanship or being very knowledgeable, since those 2 factors you're saying are not really the factors that determine one's success in distributing books, perhaps you could give a little information about a little more in depth about what are the factors that empower one. And I think the way you answered it was a good way to do it philosophically, which is basically, if you do a good Krishna conscious job, meaning you follow the Krishna conscious principles, then you'll be able to distribute books. Don't worry. And that's I appreciate that explanation, which I accept 100%. But still, perhaps you could explain within, even if we were to accept that as something that's a fact, but after you accept that, then you see not everyone does the same, right? Some people like you do something kind of amazing, and others do maybe distribute a few books less. So what are the factors that go into determining by Krishna, perhaps, how the results are of the different devotees?
Okay. Well, Rupa Goswami says in the Nectar of Instruction, Utsahan Nishat you have to be enthusiastic, you have to be patient, you have to be determined. So that has to be there. But and to start off with, maybe not everybody's gonna be feel very comfortable out there, or get a very good result, so to speak. But my conviction is that any devotee that, if they stick with it, if they're a sadhaka, if they, as you mentioned and I mentioned, chanting their rounds, following the regular principles, if they're living at a temple, going to the program, but if not, reading the books, doing all the sadhana, the proper sadhana, and they go out there and they just, enthusiastically, with enthusiasm and determination and patience like that, they try to distribute the books and also get, you can use techniques that other devotees who are doing it successfully are using, and just keep at it. You'll crack it. I mean, Krishna will reciprocate. He'll reciprocate in two ways, actually. He'll reciprocate in that you'll get some results miraculously, and he'll reciprocate also in that you'll feel enlightenment. You'll feel that, wow, this is like some special sort of an activity. This is not an ordinary activity. I mean, I always feel after those 4 hours, at the end of 4 hours of distributing, I feel happier and more energetic than before I began. That's right. That's not supposed to happen. Materially speaking, if you do something where you're working for 4 hours, you should feel like less energy, right? And if you work at something you don't like, you're not going to feel. But I always feel like way better, materially. I mean, I just, on every different level, I just feel, wow, I don't want to stop. And I know it's because it's a transcendental activity. As far as the results of other devotees, I know that I've heard some amazing results that a devotee named Parameshwar, I guess of course you know Parameshwar. Yeah, Parameshwar has been doing this program, and he's doing it on more or less on the East Coast. And he sent me a text message about a few days ago. He did in one parking lot, in a Walmart parking lot. He did in 6 hours about 5 or 6 boxes of books and $750. And another devotee, Devavrata, who's a brahmachari, sort of part of the Udwarka temple, he's been having great results as well. Not to that degree, but a lot of $300, $400, $500 days. So it seems like something's really happening. Ananda Kirtan, devotees are, finding it works. And yeah, I mean, I think the only reason we hadn't been doing this seriously prior to this is because we had the schools to go to, and before that we were working the airport. But there's that expression, necessity is the mother of invention. So we had a necessity here. We didn't have the airport. We don't have the schools because of COVID. And we had to come up with some way to distribute books. So we just started trying these parking lots, and it's been really good. I mean, actually, parking lots is where I started out way back in the 70s when I first started distributing. And yeah, they were good then, but everybody, we started doing other things and just kind of forgot about them, but they're there. I don't know if that kind of answered or responded to your comment/question sufficiently.
Yeah, it did. It was very nice. And therefore, it was your speaking is so interesting that it made me think of another question.
Sure.
So my next question is, well, I would say that, well, pretty much your audience here does not consist of, except for me, except for myself, no one here is initiated with an ISKCON, and except for my wife, who's not on the screen with me, and then and except for you, Bhrgupati Prabhu, and no one here has spent time living in the temples, although I think Sasha has for a little, and maybe Dixon has for a little.
I did for a little bit too.
In an ISKCON temple, Marla.
Yeah, in an ISKCON temple, New Vrindavan, yeah.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Okay, wonderful. And I didn't know that.
I am also.
And you want to, Parul? Okay.
Yes.
So this is ecstatic. Okay, so my next question should be very interesting for this audience.
Okay.
So my question, because it pertains to people who are really interested in practicing Krishna consciousness, just being a devotee. So what I'm wondering is, Bhrgupati, could you tell us, Prabhu, this book distribution that you're talking about, would you say that, like I'm a practicing lawyer, my wife is a teacher, Bhakta Sasha is a postdoc in mathematics, everyone's got their field, right? Bhakta Aravind is doing something in IT, and I could never say what it is because all IT is like another language for me. But anyway, everyone's got their own thing. And Parul, she's working in the prisons, helping out as a nurse. Yeah, such a noble profession. Anyway, so there's all these professions. So I think honestly, Bhrgupati Prabhu, I think most people, when they hear you describing this, those who are more attracted to Krishna consciousness, they find what you're saying, the more that they're attracted to Krishna consciousness, the more that they're inspired naturally in their heart by what you're saying, in my experience, just hearing about these things over decades. But also, I think the tendency is to think that's for like the book distributor kind of profession, or that's for the temple devotee, or even if you're not a temple devotee, but it's for a certain kind of person. So I wanted to hear from you, Bhrgupati Prabhu. Would you say that your service of book distribution is kind of like the way that I'm a lawyer and Sasha's a mathematician and Arvind's in IT, I hope I'm right, Arvind, Parul's a nurse, et cetera. And then you're a book distributor. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
I'd say that's a valid way of looking at it.
Really? I was waiting for you to tell me it's invalid, but anyway, go ahead.
No, I think it's a valid way to look at it. I don't consider myself, superior to people who are working on the outside and practicing Krishna consciousness and also supporting the movement. I mean, this is my psychophysiological makeup. So I'm doing what I can do. Everybody, people do what everybody does what they can do to engage in devotional service. Actually, I'd like to read a couple sentences from Purport Prabhupada writes here in the 12th canto. The verse is, well, I'll just read a couple of these sentences. One should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. There are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, well, this is not the case here because we are practicing the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, but it says that person can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. Just as in business, one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor and some organization to expand. So the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or temple for propagating Krishna consciousness, or he can help with the publications. There are various fields of activity, and one should be interested in such activities. If one cannot sacrifice the results of his activities, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one to rise to a higher state of love for God, whereupon one becomes perfect. So I don't know, I think that's kind of applies here. I think everybody just has to, according to their situation, try to figure out how they can help the Krishna consciousness movement. In my case, it's by directly going out there and distributing the books. But as I mentioned, I'm distributing subsidized books. Yesterday I covered the cost of printing for Everything Plus, but in general, I'm distributing subsidized books. That's what enables me to have that mood of like not worrying at all about what kind of donations people are giving. So, and as I'm doing it with help from the congregation, so it's a team effort. I just happen to be the person who's going out in the field, so to speak. But I mean, the people who are donating money to subsidize, sponsor these books, they're also distributing the books. Anyway, I think what Prabhupada said here in that purport was pretty clear. Please respond to that. Do you think that was a good, what I read was relevant or no?
Certainly, yeah. Yeah, and it's very nice, and it's encouraging. It's encouraging to us to contribute in the way that comes natural to us.
Yeah.
I was also thinking, it might occur to you about how some folks who have their daily work within the material world. Sometimes, they join the devotees for chanting Hare Krishna, Harinam before the public, maybe on a weekly Harinam on Saturday. And then some of them, they may join you to distribute books on a Saturday or something, or in it, or something like that too, even though they're working the rest of their time. But I certainly, I loved your answer though. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the idea is just to, do as much as we can. Surrender as much as we can. Try to practice and try to facilitate the spreading of Krishna consciousness as much as we possibly can. Don't be, feel guilty that you're not doing more. No, just do if we do as much. The process works, right? That's what we're told. It works. So if we do as much as we can, you're getting purified by whatever you're doing. However much you're chanting, however much you're trying to go out and distribute or trying to facilitate others who are going out and distributing, that's purifying us. As Prabhupada says here, that this voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one rise to a higher state of love for God, whereupon one becomes perfect. So that's it. We just do as much as we can. Don't have to feel bad. The process works. We're getting purified by whatever energy, resources, etc. we're using in Krishna service. And as we get purified, we're going to be able to increase our service. Krishna says in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. So, when Krishna sees that we're trying, he's going to inspire us. He's going to, that intelligence by which we can come to Krishna's intelligence, how to increase our service, how to intensify our sadhana, how to, expand our preaching like that. That's how that intelligence will come in that form. So it's all good, as they say out there in the material world, but of course it's not. It's all bad out there. But in Krishna consciousness, it is all good, because any effort we make, it's already pleasing Krishna. And then it's if we just keep with it, It's just Krishna's gonna give us, with purification of consciousness, more realization and, of how we can increase our service, and he'll give us the understanding how to increase our service, and he'll give us the enthusiasm and the, energy to do it as well. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say or a question they'd like to ask?
Hi, Hare Krishna. This is Abhishek here. I had a question.
Sure.
Actually, based on your last comment, an interesting thing or practice which I've been trying to adopt myself lately has been typically living in the material world. I would pray for good things to happen to me, but now reading more on Krishna consciousness and adopting those practices, I almost surrender to Krishna, and I'd rather than praying for good things to happen, I just pray that Krishna equips me with enough strength to face or overcome any challenges that come my way. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. That is prayer in itself, praying for any material benefits, is that a good thing or a bad thing, or is that something I should seek for? Or
Well, it's better than nothing. Praying to Krishna for material benefit is better than not praying to Krishna. So
Okay.
It's a good starting point, but ideally you want to, it's like Prabhupada, in some lecture I heard, he said, if a king offers you a benediction and you ask for a pinch of ashes, then you're kind of not using your intelligence. That's not manifesting very good intelligence. You should ask for half the kingdom. So in other words, if you're developing a relationship with Krishna, who can award you anything, award you love of God, why just be asking Krishna for some material benefit? Yeah, I'm going to read you a couple. This is from that same section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is a very nice pastime, which illustrates what we should want. So it says here, one day an astrologer came who said to know everything, past, present, and future. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu received him with all honor and put this question to him. Please tell me who I was in my previous birth. The Lord said, please tell me by your astrological computations. Hearing the words of the Lord, the astrologer immediately began to calculate. Through calculation and meditation, the all-knowing astrologer saw the greatly effulgent body of the Lord, which is the resting place of all the unlimited Vaikuntha planets. Seeing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be the same absolute truth, the supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead, the astrologer became confused. Struck with wonder, the astrologer remained silent, unable to speak. But when the Lord again put the question before him, he replied as follows. My dear sir, in your previous birth, you were the shelter of all creation, the supreme personality of Godhead, full of all opulences. You are now the same personality of Godhead that you were in your previous birth. Your identity is inconceivable, eternal happiness. When the astrologer was speaking so highly of him, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped him and began to smile. My dear sir, he said, I think you do not know very clearly what I was, for I know that in my previous birth, I was a cowherd boy. In my last birth, I was born in the family of cowherd men, and I gave protection to the calves and cows. Because of such pious activities, I have now become the son of a Brahmana. The astrologer said, what I saw in meditation was full of opulence, and therefore I was confused. I am certain that your form and the form I saw in my meditation are one and the same. If I see any difference, this is an act of your illusory energy. The all-knowing astrologer concluded, whatever you may be, or whoever you may be, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Then it concludes by saying, by his causeless mercy, the Lord then gave him love of Godhead, thus rewarding him for his service. See, so that's what we're after. It's a nice pastime. I thought I'd just throw that in there. But that's what we're after. We want to be recipients of the Lord's causeless mercy in the form of being awarded love of Godhead. That's the reward we want. The reward we want for our service is to receive the causeless mercy of Lord Chaitanya and be awarded love of Godhead.
Okay, thank you.
And since I'm here, okay, that's a good question. I'm going to read you one more thing about that. Find it. You might hear that and you might think, yeah, okay, but that's, that ain't going to happen. That's a really lofty thing. But let me read you this. I'm going to read you something from that appears in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Rupa Goswami included in his book Govinda Lilamrita. I don't know if he wrote it or if it's Prabodhananda Saraswati, but anyway, here it goes. Yog jana matam bhuvanam dayalor ulagayan apyakarot pramatam swaprema sampat surya bhuteham Sri Krishna Chaitanyam amam prapaje. Translation: Let me surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most merciful personality of Godhead. Here's the hope now. He says, he delivers those souls who are merged in ignorance and offers them the highest gift, love of Krishna, and thus makes them mad for Krishna consciousness. Okay, so is that a true statement? Well, we have to take it as a true statement. It's being presented by Rupa Goswami. It's either his statement or Prabodhananda Saraswati. So if that's true, that's pretty good, because it's saying that he's, Lord Chaitanya, he's taking people who are merged in ignorance and he's offering them the highest gift of love of Krishna. So in other words, there's hope for anybody. There's hope for us. Even if somebody's merged in ignorance, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, if they take shelter of Lord Chaitanya, which is taking shelter of the spiritual master. The spiritual master, I heard it say, Prabhupada say in a lecture the other day, just like the sun is in one place, but the sun is present everywhere by the sunshine. So in the same way, Krishna is present and enters into people's lives, just like the sun enters into your room in the form of the sunshine. The sun doesn't come in there personally, but it's entering into your room as the sunshine. So in the same way, Krishna is entering into people's lives as the spiritual master. He's like the sunshine. So if you take shelter of the spiritual master, that's taking shelter of Lord Chaitanya. And the result can be that even if you're merged in ignorance, you can be eligible to receive the highest gift of love of Krishna and become mad for Krishna consciousness. There are many such statements to that effect. But that's one beautiful one. That's in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in the chapter called Lord Chaitanya's Teachings to Rupa Goswami. Teachings to Rupa Goswami. It's actually the first chapter. It's right in the beginning of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya.
Well, actually, so those were really helpful. And the context of my questions were really, so recently, just a month ago, I was down with COVID for a few weeks. And it actually gave me some time to contemplate. And I was trying to find the spiritual significance of it. And so what I was wondering was, is this something which Krishna has given me as a challenge and to maybe overcome and learn something from this? I don't know if that's the right way of thinking, but and then I was just thinking, if should I pray to Krishna to say, please help me overcome this? So I guess my question was, if something like that happens, should I just surrender and accept it, or should I still, pray to, sort of overcome what is seemingly a bad thing? Or
That's a good question. That's practical and realistic. I didn't, initially I didn't kind of think of that's what you're referring to, but
yeah.
I guess the way I would be praying is I'd probably be praying something like this. I kind of would like be talking to Krishna. I'd say, Krishna, I don't think I'm a pure devotee, so I don't think if I'm going to die now, I don't think I'd be going back to Godhead, because I got to still have a lot of work I got to do here. A lot of purification that I still have to undergo. So I could use some additional time. So to that end, if you could, please cure me or help me get cured, because I'd like to use I'd like more time to continue practicing Krishna consciousness so I could get purified, and rather than having to leave this body now and start up, again in another lifetime. I know you take up from where you left off, but still there's a bunch of time wasted in between. But that's how I'm seeing it, Krishna. I'm just I reveal my mind to Krishna. That's how I'm seeing it. But of course, if you have some other plan, okay, whatever you think is best. But that's how I'm understanding the situation. So please just give me your mercy and allow me to understand what's going on and what you want me to, how you want me to understand this whole situation. But I think it's okay to pray to Krishna to remain alive and healthy so you can continue practicing Krishna consciousness, because if we're not pure devotees, then we need that time to make more advancements so we can go back to Godhead. What do you think of that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah. I mean, I guess so. I mean, I guess I need to be alive and healthy in order to make any, advancement. So I guess it's not completely a selfish
I don't think so. I think it's
desire
okay.
to remain alive, especially if it's for, spiritual advancement.
Yeah, and I guess I would throw in there as I'm praying to Krishna, but Krishna, if that's not your desire, if it's you've got it sort of already decided that I'm gonna be leaving my body as a result of this, then please help me do it in Krishna consciousness. Don't let me between now and the time I have to leave my body become so disturbed in mind that I'm not able to think of you. At least I might not be able to chant, or please help me do it in Krishna consciousness. It's that simple. If you have to, if I have my druthers, if I have my choice, I'd like to be able to recover from COVID and be healthy and continue my devotional service as I've been doing. But if that's not possible, then you just allow me to leave my body in Krishna consciousness.
Right. Thank you for that perspective.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so it's 4:00. Atman, you want anything else? Any more discussion or questions? Otherwise, I think you said 4:00 is when we would chant a bit and then finish up. Or what?
Yeah, I think it'd be great if someone has like a 2-minute a question that takes 2 minutes, you could take one more question. I know Sasha is eager to ask for if there's 2 people each with 2-minute questions.
Okay, no, I'm in no rush myself personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I got all the time, bro.
No, on the other hand, I do try to keep the schedule because while I'm also in no rush, I know that in experience, my experience is that sometimes certain people who are humbly, scheduling this program as part of their Saturdays, I know that some of them, they kind of drop off, all of a sudden, and when the program continues after. So for that reason, I just try to keep it. But is there anyone besides Sasha who has a short question? If so, raise your hand or unmute yourself just to say yes. Okay, so no one's doing that. So Bhrgupati Prabhu, how about Sasha asks one question and then you lead a little kirtan?
Sure, perfect.
Great.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, like you just mentioned that verse from 12th chapter. So I just read it a few days ago, and so I had questions. So like when Srila Prabhupada says, like, if you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me. And then if in the purport, he says like, but if you cannot sacrifice the results of the activities, the same then you can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. So I just wanted to clarify, like, this working for Krishna, so it doesn't apply to most jobs, right? So in most jobs, it's not like directly maybe like working like for or fulfilling Krishna's tasks, but it's more in the category of where you can still sacrifice like your income for Krishna, right?
Yeah, that's what he's Prabhupada's talking about, your income here. Obviously, most people are not going to be able to sacrifice all their income, or they might, just due to practicality or attachment. But so Prabhupada's suggesting here that, okay, sacrifice as much as you can. If you're earning like whatever, X, and if you can't sacrifice all of it, then sacrifice half of it. If you can't sacrifice half of it, sacrifice a quarter of it. If you can't sacrifice a quarter of it, sacrifice 10% or whatever, And as he points out here, the same person, that this voluntary service to the cause of Krishna will help one rise to a higher state of love of God, whereupon one becomes perfect. So that's the principle that's being stated here by Prabhupada, that, whatever service you do for Krishna, you get purified, and that elevates you. And the reward is you'll be given the intelligence, the inspiration, and to see how you could do more service.
Okay, thank you.
And eventually, as we just heard there when I was reading it, the final reward will be, as mentioned here, by Krishna's causeless mercy, hopefully we'll receive love of Godhead as the ultimate reward for that service. That's the goal. Okay, so should we do a kirtan?
Yes, please, Prabhuji.
Okay, Jai.
So remember, everyone will be mute, but please chant in refrain when it's our turn every other mantra to get more into get the benefit of the kirtan even more than if you're merely listening, which is also good.
Okay, so about what, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like that?
3, 4, 5 minutes is good.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. Okay. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamim Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvashesha Sunyavadi Vasyacha Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.
Haribo. If devotees would like to join me expressing appreciation for Bhrgupati Prabhu, who so kindly gave us his wonderful association this evening, now is a good time. His Grace Bhrgupati Prabhu ki jai.
Yeah. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
And thanks to all of you very much for joining us this evening. I hope you got a lot out of the class and the association. I hope you found it, you learned something and you found it beneficial.